Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you a late August garden tour. So let's go. If you're new to my YouTube channel, welcome. Thank you for watching my videos and thank you for subscribing to my channel. Your support truly means a lot to me. Here where I live in New Hampshire Zone 5B, even though we have a very short growing season, there are still a lot of beautiful things blooming in my garden. And as always, if you have any questions or comments on anything you see in this video, please drop it down in the comment section below and I'll be sure to get back to you as soon as I can. I hope you enjoy this tour. We're going to start the tour on the south side of my house. And right here is a nice big hydrangea. To be honest with you, I don't know a lot of the varieties of my hydrangeas that I have in my yard because they've been here for many years. But what I can tell you is that it really needs to be cut back next spring. So be on the lookout for that in the springtime. That's the reason why if you have a hydrangea and you don't have a ton of blooms on it, or it looks very leggy and many of the blooms are, let's say, on the bottom like this one, but not on the top, that would be exactly why. Certain types of hydrangeas, not all of them, need to be cut back hard in the springtime, and this is definitely a candidate for one of those cutbacks. But nevertheless, it is beautiful, and I am enjoying whatever blooms are on here. The fringed bleeding heart continues to put out blooms, pink ones as well as white ones, and I'm really enjoying it. A lot of people ask me, why doesn't this bleeding heart die back? It's the variety. This is different from the old-fashioned bleeding heart in a few ways. The leaves look different, and also the blooms are all season long, spring through fall. What I also enjoy about it is that it doesn't die back like the old-fashioned bleeding heart. It just keeps blooming. It's a very vigorous plant and I love it so much. It also has a nice bluish green color to its leaves. And right next to it, check out these wax begonias. They are still doing really well here. And I am definitely going to repeat this next year. I'm also enjoying the vinca. Now, the begonia and vinca were started from seed indoors during the winter months, and I have made videos showing how to collect the seeds from these plants as well as how to start them from seed. Any related videos I'll be sure to put down in the description below. And then we have more of the fringed bleeding heart. This view right here, I love it. There is just so much going on here, lots of color. I love the white hydrangea blooms with the yellow goldstrum rudbeckia. We have the echinacea purpurea, purple coneflower. There is the great blue lobelia. And then that hot pink color you see in the background, that's just a tall phlox. I'm really hoping to add more tall phlox into my garden. I'll be dividing them. I have them in different areas of my garden. And I really want them out in this flower bed where they will get a lot of sun. The tall leaves that you see here, those are amaryllis. And they've been planted out here since in the springtime. We will be digging those up very soon and we're going to be putting them in for dormancy. They need a 2-month period of dormancy and then they'll come out of dormancy and hopefully they'll bloom sometime near Christmas. I love lungwort. It does well in full shade to part shade, and this area gets a little bit of sun, but the plant still provides some nice interest towards the front of the flower bed. And as you move this way in the flower bed, the plants get a little bit more shade. And I want you to notice that the spots on the leaves get just a little bit darker. And that's the reason why, is that the plant just does really well in a shady location. And boy, does it put beautiful blooms in the springtime as well. If you don't have great blue lobelia in your landscape, definitely consider it. It's the end of August and just look how beautiful this plant looks. It really pops in the landscape, I feel. I call this flower bed my long border. It's one of the only areas in my yard that gets a good amount of sun. And it would actually get more sun if we removed this tree. And if you look in the background, my yard has so many trees that I feel comfortable removing this one tree. It is pretty when it changes color in the fall time, but it casts so much shade in one section of this flower bed. So I really want to remove this tree, and the goal is to have it removed sometime later this year or during the winter months. And by doing that, it will allow for so much more sun in this particular flower bed. But notice how the rudbeckia just pops. It really looks so pretty. And the Stelladoro daylilies, they are a reblooming daylily, continue to put out some blooms, which is always nice. This area here was quite overgrown. It had a lot of bee balm, and when we went in there to cut all the bee balm back, we just kind of trampled a little bit on some of the beautiful perennials in here. And that's okay. I'm just going to have to remember next year to cut that bee balm back a little bit earlier so that we can really enjoy the blooms that are in here of the great blue lobelia, as well as the coneflower and the rudbeckia. And look how beautiful the hydrangeas look this time of year. They are on full display. They are just looking so gorgeous. They've gotten huge. They are very, very big. So again, in the spring, I'll be coming in here and really cutting these back hard. We have a couple of different varieties of hydrangea here, and you'll see the difference. The colors are similar, but you'll notice one is more of a lace cap, and the other one, it has more of a cone shape to it. And I will show you the mess that's here, because this is real life gardening. We had cut back some limbs on some trees to allow some sun to come in. So one day I need to come in and just burn some brush. Unfortunately, this brush is covering the beauty of my hydrangeas, but that's okay. I swear every video I make always has a chipmunk in it. My raised flower beds are still continuing to produce strawberries, which has been really nice. And these are just the small alpine strawberries, but boy, they really are tasty. It's hard to keep up with eating them all, so I very happily share them with my chipmunk friends. Lots of work to be done during the fall months, so it's just a matter of prioritizing. This section of my lawn struggled all summer long. I'm not sure why. It could be insect damage, who knows, but I do need to come in here and dethatch the lawn, probably top dress it with some compost, and then reseed it. I may be making some videos showing you my process for taking care of my lawn. Typically here in New Hampshire, the time to reseed a lawn or sections of the lawn are in the late summer, early fall months. You'll notice as we move this way, the lawn looks a lot better. There are sections that are tired, but overall this side looks so much better than this side of the lawn. But given that it's the end of August, I really am happy with how this flower bed is looking. It's nice having some pops of color this time of year. Here we are at the side walkway garden. And another favorite plant of mine during the end of August is Joe Pye weed. It's just so tall and the pollinators love it. It's cloudy and a little rainy this morning, so they're not out here yet, but they were yesterday. They were all over it. And I love how they look next to the ornamental grass. At the base here, we have some tall phlox. I'll definitely be dividing that as well and moving it around. And do you remember when we cut back some of my perennial mums so that they'd be bushier? Well, they are all budded up again. They're going to look so pretty in a few weeks. They're going to be a nice purple color. I have really enjoyed the miniature eggplants as well as the miniature peppers. But things are slowing down. After all, our nighttime temperatures are about 50-degree Fahrenheit range. So soon enough, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be pulling out all my vegetable plants. And right behind this eggplant here is another large mum that we cut back as well. And it's also a purple color mum. You can see it's quite large. I definitely want to divide and move that around next spring. I didn't get to it this year, so that's okay. Things look a little messy in this flower bed, at least for my liking, but there is some beauty in here. We have the Joe Pye weed over there and some more of the great blue lobelia. Do you remember that we pruned the dianthus back really hard? It just provides a nice evergreen color towards the front of this flower bed. And you'll see that there are a few stray blooms here, but that's not typically the purpose because they're not going to put out a lot of blooms. It's more just to keep them tidy, compact, and looking good throughout the fall months. And then next year, come springtime, they're going to put out another great show. And I have a lot of dianthus. I have divided and moved it so many times. I made a video showing you how to divide your dianthus, so be sure to check it out. And if you look, that plant just keeps on going to the end of the side of the walkway. I call this the old arbor vitae bed, and many of my flower beds need work. They need to be weeded, bird baths need to be cleaned, but I wanted to do this tour before the end of August, just to show you how everything's looking. And any annuals that you see in my garden tours were pretty much started from seed, and they were seeds that I collected. And that's why we have a mix of all different beautiful coleus in here. The white colored plant is alyssum, sweet alyssum or lobularia, and the purple colored plant, that's the trailing lobelia, so that's an annual. The pink colored plants, those are vinca. And things are just really looking beautiful about now. I really love this bed. It's one of my favorite beds in my garden. In the center are some perennials. There's a juga, and there are also some rhododendrons. And the rhododendrons were placed in here kind of as a holding area. They won't be in here forever. They might stay in here another 1, maybe 2 years, and then I'll eventually find them their forever home. But just notice how much this bed has filled in, especially if you've been following my channel for a while. I feel like every time I do a garden tour, it just looks more and more full and lush. Pretty soon I'll be collecting the seeds off my coleus. they're not quite ready yet. On the side porch, the window boxes are looking really, really pretty. I just love all the colors of the plants in here. This is definitely something I'll repeat next year. I'm not sure if I'm going to do alyssum or alyssum with the begonias, but regardless, I think they're all thriving right now. And here's the other one. It's amazing how much window boxes fill in. When you first plant a pot or any sort of container, as long as you give it the right light conditions and fertilizer, water, do the regular pruning or deadheading, the plants will reward you. I just have some pots of basil. These were basil that were taken from cuttings. And I definitely recommend that. If you're going to have basil, grow it, but then take cuttings also, just to increase your stock. I love this angle right here, this view. I just think it looks really pretty. Through the camera, I think the lawn looks good, but if you get close up, it actually looks a little tired this time of year. This container pot is looking really pretty. I have this coleus somewhere else in my yard, but I noticed that it does really, really well with just a little bit of sunlight. And the begonias also really enjoy getting just a little bit of sun. I like the silver color of the Dusty Miller. I think it adds a nice different color to the pot. And then we just have the nice trailing plant at the bottom. A couple of different varieties of lysimachia. There's the creeping jenny in there. And the creeping jenny is a perennial here in my zone, which is always nice. Anytime you can add perennials in your container pots and fill them with annuals, especially annuals that you started from seed, it's such a low budget way to go. And here's the other container pot. That's just one begonia plant. It's amazing how much it just fills that container. Now, a lot of people cut off the blooms off of their coleus. And I'll admit it does look nicer when you cut the blooms off. But I am trying to save the seeds from my coleus plant, which is why I'm at this point leaving the blossoms on there. I want the blooms to go by, and then I want the plant to go to seed. And if you look carefully, there are a couple of blooms that have gone by and are starting to turn a brown color. Probably in another week, those will be ready for me to collect the seeds from them. And then just some more pots of basil. I have some freebie plants that had dropped their seeds from last year, and that's always a bonus. This time of year, as we approach fall, it's actually a very pretty color to have in the garden. And this is calendula. So if you have calendula seeds, or you buy some calendula seeds, and they're an annual in your zone, try sprinkling them on the ground. You may be surprised next year that they come up. Another freebie plant in here is cosmos, and it's looking very pretty. As we head to the east side of my house, it definitely gets shadier. And right here is my hosta garden. And you'll notice at the base of this tree, this particular mini or small hosta is blooming. Now, hosta come in all different sizes, and they also come in different colors of blooms. Many of them are purple, some are white, and then different hosta bloom at different times of the year. So I'm actually really enjoying the purple colored blooms of my hosta this time of year on these small plants, because as you look in my larger hosta garden here, many of the hosta blooms have already gone by. In fact, I need to come in here and just cut back all the spent blooms. The hanging baskets continue to be beautiful. They do need a lot of water this time of year. A lot of water, a lot of deadheading, but boy, I really enjoy them. I just think that they add a lot of nice interest in this shady part of my yard. And they also add a lot of vertical interest. And what's really nice is the impatiens have started going to seed. So I've been busy collecting seeds off of a lot of my plants now. You can see that the impatiens, as well as the begonias at the front of this flower bed, are adding just a little bit of color. And this is my first year adding some annuals here in this bed. I really am enjoying it. I think next year I'm going to add more because I had a lot of begonias, I had a lot of impatiens. So I definitely want to pack this bed towards the front of the bed with a lot more of these impatiens as well as these begonias. Now that I know that they do well in this flower bed. This is the other area of my garden where I added that coleus that we saw in a container pot. Granted, these were planted much later, but still, they are not putting on as great of a show. And so I'm not sure if I'll add them here again next year or not. I may, but I really need to get them in the ground earlier than I did this year. What I do like about them is that they are adding that nice red color. It's either red or hot pink in this flower bed, which is nice. There were a lot of shade-loving perennials in this bed. A lot of perennials that have gone by, but I think it still looks nice and tidy and clean, considering this really is a woodland garden. A lot of my flower beds in the backyard are where the lawn ends and where the woods begin. That can get very tricky to landscape with, but I've had fun attempting to do it, and every year I'm learning what works and what doesn't work. Be on the lookout where this flower bed ends. As we head to the backyard, there are going to be a lot of changes happening, and I really can't wait to bring you along that journey. There are perennials tucked in here, but it's all overgrown. There's some perennials that aren't in the best location, and you can see it just needs to get cleaned and weeded. And we'll see how far we get from now until the ground freezes. There's lots of opportunity. The key is knowing how much sun each area of my backyard gets. And that's something I still need to figure out and spend the time looking at before I get planting. Here in this rock garden, the begonias that were planted a little bit late are just starting to put on a nice show. And I'm really enjoying them. They just give a little bit of color. Here on my back porch, I have window boxes, and I'm not sure. I like parts of it, and then parts of it I'm not thrilled about. They are full, which is nice, and you can see lots of repeating plants that we've already seen. There is the perennial lamium, a couple of different kinds of lysimachia. We have some begonia, some impatiens, and then there's also the vinca. It's definitely full, but I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. It at least adds some interest in the backyard, which is nice. And the hummingbirds are very happy with the coleus and all the plants in the yard, which is an extra treat. I'll be busy this fall. I need to come and power wash, you can see. But that's okay. That's all part of maintenance, garden and home maintenance, right? And here we are at my rose garden. The roses have definitely put on a second flush, which I've really been enjoying. There are some really pretty roses in here. And you can see the wax begonias. I packed them in the center there. They are really looking gorgeous next to the roses, I feel. In the center, other than the wax begonias that are there are some perennial salvias, purple color. There are 3 taller ones and 1 shorter one. The 3 taller ones overwintered. They were seeds, I think, that just dropped. And then the shorter one was one that I bought from my friend who has a backyard plant nursery. I'll definitely be collecting the seeds off of those. I really do enjoy the annual salvias. I think they're very pretty. The red as well as the purple. And the yellow color flower that you see here, that's an annual that's self-seeded and it's called bidens or bidens. They look a little scraggly, but honestly, I do enjoy them. I think that the yellow looks really pretty in this flower bed. The roses were deadheaded once, and that's why they're putting on another flush of colors. I could come in here and deadhead them again, but at this point in the season, I don't believe it really matters. I don't think deadheading again would put on any more blooms at this point. So I probably will just leave them as is. I really like this white colored drift rose. I think it's very pretty. And when it does its initial bloom, wow, the whole thing is just covered in blossoms. And you really can't go wrong with the pink colored knockout roses. They're just a classic rose, I feel. And here's another drift rose. It almost has iridescent qualities to it. It really is stunning, I feel. I'm hopeful that the vegetable garden will be doing a makeover this year. So be on the lookout for that. A second grouping or succession of green beans were planted weeks ago. Hopefully, they will produce beans before we get our first expected frost, which typically is sometime during the middle to end of September. The asparagus just is staying as is. And then later in the season, when it's all died back, I'll be cutting it back and I'll be adding compost to the base of it. And the cucumbers are slowing down with nighttime temperatures in about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. They're definitely starting to slow down. But boy, we did enjoy a lot of cucumbers from this plant. And there are a number of plants here. There's probably, I think, 6 or 8 plants here. But there are still a lot of blossoms, so you never know. In my backyard, even though it's a weedy section of my yard, I do have the annual variety or version of the rudbeckia. And it basically self-seeds itself here and there in my backyard. I don't mind. It's really the only thing that's blooming in this very way back part of my yard. Speaking of the way back part of my yard, one of you had asked me for an update on this part of my garden, and I planted this last year. It is Creeping Jenny. I was experimenting with a ground cover. I wanted to see how it would do, how it would cover the ground in an area that I really don't have much going on. And honestly, in the spring, it looked really, really pretty. Even the early summer months, you could see it just popping, the chartreuse green color. And I like it. I'm not sure I love it. I saw a garden in Canada once that had Creeping Jenny as a ground cover, and it looked beautiful there. I think the key would be, you can see there's weeds in here. So the key would be to keep it weeded. And I think also, I had put another plant in here along with the Creeping Jenny. I put blue fescue. I feel like it's getting choked out. It's not very tall. It's a short variety of blue fescue. I think it's the Elijah variety. So I think if you're going to do this, if you're going to put Creeping Jenny in the landscape as a ground cover, you really want to make sure that whatever you complement with it, or you want to do some companion planting, just make sure it's tall enough so that you can really enjoy whatever else you put with it. And then just make sure you keep it weeded. So this was an experiment for me, but it's not something that I'm going to repeat all around my yard. We're now heading towards the front of my house, and we're going to skip a large chunk of this area here. There are lots of hosta and lots of heuchera. In the effort of doing one flower bed at a time, the flower bed that I last worked on was right here. I'm noticing it's very wet in this section here, so I believe there's an irrigation issue happening. I don't think the issue is towards the front of the bed. It might just be that some water is running off from the lawn, but either I have a sprayer that's spraying way out there, or there's a leak. So that's something I need to address. And the next flower bed I'll work on will be this one here. But in terms of this flower bed, I did come in here, and as sparse as it may look, the goal was for it to be cleaned up, and I want it to look really nice for next year. And I also am planning to put a lot of annuals in this bed, probably impatiens next year. But I'm happy that it's been cleaned up. I'm happy that drip irrigation got added into this bed. And now it's ready to be planted for next year. In the flower bed next to it, we had also worked on this flower bed together in a previous project. And again, the plantings are quite small. The key was to get the flower bed cleaned up, to divide plants in here and make space for a boxwood that's going to go right there. And then for next year, this bed will really be filled in. In terms of what's blooming in here, the cardinal flower is just starting to go by. And pretty soon I'll be able to collect seeds from it. But that's a really pretty perennial here where I live. Here at the base of the cardinal flowers is another perennial that I recently purchased. I swear I always forget the name of this perennial. I'm going to have to pop it up on the screen. The same thing happened during my last garden tour. I was really good about deadheading it, but at this point in the season, I don't believe it's going to put out any more blooms. So I'm just letting it be. And I'll have to wait and see if I can collect the seeds off of it. So I'd rather just leave the seed pods on there, and over time I can come in and see if it produces any seeds that would be viable. I do have a couple of types of sedum that were added in this flower bed, and they will bloom, but they're not going to put on a great show because they were pretty small when they were planted, and they were also divided at that time. But nevertheless, they will bloom a little this year. And then we're going to move this way. And I tell you, gardening is always a learning process. I wanted to pick an annual that I had on hand that needed to get in the ground. So I chose vinca. But if you know anything about vinca, vinca is a drought-tolerant plant. It thrives in conditions where it doesn't get a lot of water. Well, this bed has drip irrigation, and I'm sensing that's why it's not thriving. It's getting too much water. So next year, I will plant an annual that likes sun, but also needs a lot of water. You can see that the wax begonias are doing really well. They're at least providing some color in this flower bed. And that's the key. If you don't have a lot of perennials in a flower bed that are adding interest or color, annuals are always nice to add. And these annuals were added quite late into this flower bed. But I'm really happy. I'm just glad that they're giving any amount of color in this bed. And I added a hydrangea towards the back of this flower bed last year. It's looking really, really beautiful. Putting on some really pretty colors now that I'm really enjoying. As we make our way to the lilac bed, boy, I tell you, I'm so glad that we added some color to this bed. It looked really pretty in the spring. There was lots of color, but then there was a lull. And just by adding a couple of small plants here and there, what a difference it makes. We recently added the black-eyed Susans, or the rudbeckia, and they look really happy. We also added some sedum. They were small divisions, so over time those will fill in. And then we added some of the alliums, as well as small pops of color there in the center. Those are impatiens. And towards the front of the flower bed are just more of the wax begonias. This plant right here, this is a perennial mum, and it's a yellow color. And you can see that it's budded up. We had cut it back just so that it wouldn't be so leggy. And also in this flower bed are a purple colored aster. I believe it's the New England aster. And those are budded up as well. And I added those all along the front of this flower bed just to add interest for the late summer, early fall months. So just wait until those are blooming. They're really going to fill in the front of this bed nicely. And then as we make our way this way, these are all flower beds that were redone this year. And I'm really happy. I'm really glad with how they came out. We added some heuchera at the base of this tree. We also added wax begonias here. And I mentioned in a previous video that I don't feel they're getting enough sun here. So next year, I won't be putting wax begonias here. I'm going to try impatiens. And then behind them are astilbe. Next year will be their first year to see if they bloom, because they were just added this year. And we'll see how they do. It's all trial and error. We have more heuchera around the tree there. And then check out all the impatiens and the coleus. They really are putting on a great show in this flower bed. We did a lot of work to this flower bed together. And I'm glad that the changes were made. I just think it's such a nice presentation when you come up the driveway. And we limbed up this hydrangea here. It doesn't get a ton of sun, so it's not going to put on a great show. The only way it'll ever put on a great show is if Mr. Budget Gardener and I come in and limb up some more trees, just to bring in a little bit more sun in this spot. But even if we don't, I'm enjoying it. I think it looks really pretty. I'm just giving you a different perspective of my front yard. This year, being my year of one flower bed at a time, has been a really good year for me. It just kept me focused on one section that I tried to work on and get it the way that I feel would look better for next year. And I'm really glad I did that. Here we are at the front of my house, and things are slowing down for sure. It is, after all, getting to be the end of summer. And this is when I start making notes of things I want to do in this flower bed. One of my goals this year, although I haven't achieved it yet, but I will be doing it soon, is digging up every other speedwell or veronica. And I want to replace them with black-eyed Susan or rudbeckia. So I need to do that pretty soon, because I know that that would add a nice pop of color in this bed this time of year. And something else that will be blooming, it's just not blooming yet, is right in over here, and that's called the Montauk daisy. I'm hoping that it blooms within the next month. I'm not noticing any buds on there yet, but once I do, I'll get very excited, because that will add a nice pop of white color in this flower bed. I am enjoying, though, the color combination of the purple veronica next to the spirea. And you can see that the pink spirea blooms are just starting to come out again. There was a lull during the summer months, but they're starting to put out some flowers, which are really pretty. I had a stray morning glory seedling that popped up, so I put it up along this trellis here, and it's really pretty. It's put on a few blooms, and I've really been enjoying them. And in fact, the plant is also starting to go to seed. So, well, you know me, I'll be collecting the seeds off of it soon. These are just the seed pods, and they're still just forming. So once those seed pods turn brown, I can collect the seeds from my morning glory plant. Here are some echinacea or coneflowers that I had winter sown a few years ago, and they bloomed for me the first time this year. So I did move them in this flower bed. And I also have a very pretty hydrangea over here, and this is the Annabelle hydrangea. It put on a few blooms this year, so I'm hoping next year it'll put on a really great show. And right near it are just more beautiful coneflowers that, again, I had winter sown, and they looked pretty when they were blooming. They're just starting to go by. In fact, I've noticed that the birds have been coming and taking some seeds off of them, which is nice, and then I know that some seeds will drop. So I'll end up with some more plants next year. I have really enjoyed these container pots on my front porch. We really just started with a small handful of plants in each of these pots. And I have a video that shows you how to collect the seeds from impatiens. So I'll be sure to add links to all those types of videos down in the description below. But you know that I've been coming out here and I've been collecting the seeds from these because there are a lot of seeds that are being formed. There's a seed pod right there that's begging to be picked. And this is a time of year when things start slowing down. You start seeing the leaves of the impatiens go from green to like a yellow color. Our nighttime temperatures have been in the about 50-ish degree Fahrenheit range, and daytime temperatures are now going to be about 70, 75 degree Fahrenheit range. And the pond is still looking nice. Up along the walkway, there were a lot of annuals that I had started from seed during the winter months. And I was slow to get them in the ground, but they eventually did make their way into the ground. You can see that the blue trailing lobelia is looking beautiful, as well as the white alyssum. And then we have some vinca, annual variety of vinca, and that is really adding some nice color in here as well. Along the walkway in the pots are dahlias that I had basically overwintered the tubers, and those are adding some nice color in this flower bed. I haven't been diligent as I have been in previous years with coming in and deadheading. Had I been doing that, the dahlias would be really blooming prolifically this time of year. But there are some blooms on each of the dahlias that are in my pots. At this point of the year, I probably won't come in and deadhead the dahlias. I do like to collect the seeds from them as well. I like this variety of dahlia. They're a nice short variety that looks perfect in the landscape. You don't have to stake it, very low maintenance. And I like adding them in the pots because the pots just are a little bit higher and they add a little bit of height in this bed. But I'm really pleased with how this front walkway is looking. I have a seedling of an impatiens. It must have dropped its seeds here. So I'm keeping it there. It's a happy little surprise. And I wanted to show you, if you look really, really carefully, there are pansy seedlings that are popping up everywhere. And this is the flower bed that I basically call it my pansy nursery. I will never start pansies from seed again, although never say never, because if you can just sprinkle the seeds and have plants just start to establish themselves in the fall time, then next year this flower bed will have so many pansies in it. And I can pick from the pansies in this bed and move them around my yard. It's just a perfect holding bed for the pansies. So we can go shopping in this bed next spring. There's something about white. I love this white dahlia plant. These are some little happy surprises too. Look at this beautiful snapdragon. I had snapdragons up along my walkway last year and they dropped their seeds. And even this trailing great blue lobelia that's just randomly here in this bed on this side dropped its seed and is looking beautiful right there. The cranesbill geraniums are still putting on a few blooms, but they're starting to get leggy again and they're starting to go to seed. And here's a really interesting looking dahlia. I love the pink color, but look at the middle of it. Just, I don't know, it looks different. The black-eyed Susans that are right next to my garage and also close to my front walkway continue to put on beautiful blooms. And I'm making notes of how long they bloom for. Any perennial that blooms this long, I feel is worth having it in the garden. I hope you enjoyed this garden tour, and until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.